Yeah, got into squash when I was 9 years old in Harrogate. I used to play lots of sports when I was younger. Football was my main one. So I used to play for my school and a boys team. And then at under 10 level, the FA didn't allow at the time girls to play with boys. So that was my, what I thought was a budding football career maybe over. So ended up going down to the squash club on a Saturday morning instead of football. Joined the junior club there. My brother had recently started playing, and yeah, that's how I got into it basically. Started playing all the time from 9 years of age. But yeah, career highlights for me, always playing for my country, playing for England has been a highlight for me. Just, you know, the honour of representing your country at events like World Team Championships, Europeans, Commonwealth Games is, you know, you don't get to do it that often. So being part of a team in squash, and I've always enjoyed that aspect of it. So yeah, always representing England. And individually, probably winning Qatar Classic was a highlight. Not so much just because of the tournament, but just looking back, I remember the feeling of being told at the presentation that by winning that event took me to world number 2, which was a big deal. Nicole David was far away in points wise at number 1 at the time. So winning that tournament and getting to my highest ever ranking was a big one. Post career, when I retired, I was already doing a fair bit of emceeing for PSA at the big events, which was good fun. It was interesting. It was harder than being a professional squash player, but I think, yeah, I thought it was harder. So I did a fair bit of that, continued to do that until just before COVID hit. I was in Australia, where I have been since pretty much. So yeah, fair bit of emceeing. And then into coaching. So coaching sort of taken over my life the last couple of years. I started working part-time as the junior coach for Squash Australia after retirement, and then became full-time maybe a year and a half ago now as National Pathways coach, so national junior coach, trying to get squash in Australia back on the map. So also having a family. That was kind of something that I wouldn't say I've been desperate for, but it's always been something, I guess, from a younger age, you kind of not presume, but you hope that you'll probably hope to get married and have kids. My life definitely didn't go down the road that I thought it would as a young girl in Harrogate. But I'm happy, absolutely thrilled with the way it has gone. You know, meeting Rach on tour and then having our little boy recently has been incredible. So yeah, we've since retiring, as well as the squash stuff, we've been sort of trying to make a little family. But yeah, it's just unbelievable when it's so different. It really makes you think, you know, back to being a player is obviously the easiest thing ever. You've only got to look after yourself, really. And now and I've always been I think anyway, I like to think I've sort of been pretty laid back and never stress or worry about anything really until something happens. Whereas yeah, since Finley was born, I've definitely been a lot more less laid back, you could say. And yeah, she's just so precious, so you want to do everything you can for him. I mean, my experience on tour as an LGBTQ plus person has been nothing more than positive, really, and I feel very fortunate to be able to say that, you know, not everyone can. For me, I was, you know, went full time after doing my A-levels at school. In squash, you know, back then there's always been sort of gay women, not so much men, or no one that had come out in the men's game. No one in the women's game really had officially come out in writing or anything like that. There wasn't really social media back then, but it was sort of well known and accepted. So I never felt scared around squash of coming out, or at the time I was not interested in women, or didn't think that was going to be a path that I would end up going down until I met Rach, and then and then it definitely was a path that I was going to go down. So that's when it all kind of was pretty amazing but scary. And long story very short, by the time everyone knew, we kept it hidden for quite a long time. Actually, that was me being sort of edgy about not so much squash, but more my family and people in my hometown knowing. But once that was sort of dealt with, the squash was amazing. That I've got all my best mates. So I've got good friends from school, but a lot of my closest friends are from squash as well. Some of them weren't surprised, and it was no big deal really. And it sounds pretty blasé, but it wasn't. And these days it helps in every walk of life. There's a lot more visibility. Back then, not so much, but it's women in sport. There's a lot of gay women, and I've always felt comfortable within squash, especially. I'm biased because it's squash and it's my sport, but generally people are pretty good. I think we're a good bunch, and most people get on well and are happy if people are happy in their own skin. And once you do, again speaking for myself, once you kind of get it off your chest and everyone knows, you realize that actually people don't care that much either. They still go to bed at night, they put their head on their pillow and not thinking, oh blimey, Jenny Duncalf's got a girlfriend, or it's not, for me it was a relief. And just I hope everyone in squash who's gay or whatever, straight as well, is happy, and everyone welcomes them, and they're accepted people within sports. They shouldn't have to come out necessarily, but at the same time it massively does help. So if you feel that you want to, then brilliant, but I don't think we want to get to a stage where you shouldn't have to, and it is just the same as being straight, which is kind of what I thought at the time before I sort of came out and was approached by a nice American guy, James, the US journalist who's been around squash for years. I'm not one to be that public about especially personal stuff, and he approached us, or me, and checking it was all right with Rach, and encouraged us to do an article, which I guess publicly made us official, even though everyone knew about it anyway. And the only reason we did that was nothing to do with us at all. It was just and like he said to us, and found out through getting loads of messages off men and women actually, when the article came out, about how pleased they were and how helpful it is, and to see people with I'm not sure we could call it a platform, but within squash, a bit of a platform within squash to be true to yourself. And if that helps, well, I've said this, I feel like I've said this a few times and everyone else does, if that helps one kid or one adult to feel comfortable in their own, or more comfortable in their own skin, then that's job done. And I think that's brilliant. That's really important as well. You see the negative stuff you do see from time to time is kind of like, oh, who cares? We don't even care anymore. Just be yourself and get on with it. We don't need to hear about it. But as we touched on before, we do need to hear about it, and you've got to keep the fight going, and keep the visibility, because there is some kid in Timbuktu who needs to see it. And not all countries are as forgiving and accepting as the countries luckily we live in England and Australia. And the more we can bring it consistently to the forefront, then hopefully that'll drip feed to other countries and other people around the world who aren't so fortunate.